What's up, YouTube? Boy, back once again with another sport topic, and today we're gonna talk some football, Houston Texans football. Today we're gonna talk about, are the Houston Texans planning on upgrading the wide receiver position this offseason? We're gonna break it down. But before we get in there, like I tell you before, if you're liking the content, make sure you're liking the channel. Make sure you're watching all the videos, you liking all the videos, you comment all the videos, you sharing all the videos on all social media platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, any type of social media platform you use. Make sure you share it on the same social media platforms. Also, follow me on social media as well. The link in the description below. We're still trying to get this channel growing and growing. You know, I can't do that without y'all help. So you know what that means. I need y'all to do your parts. I need you to tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell another friend, so they could tell some friends, so they could tell some more friends, and put them on game with the channel. Really, really appreciate that. Now, let's talk about it. It seems like more than likely the Houston Texans plan on adding to the wide receiver room and upgrading this wide receiver position this offseason. As we all know, the Houston Texans made the playoffs the last 2 years. But unfortunately for the Houston Texans offense, the only real viable receiver that we've had in both of those playoff runs was Nico Collins. It was Nico Collins and just a cast of receivers. Tank Dell missed both playoff runs, and the Texans planned and tried to add to it this past season by bringing in Stephon Diggs. But as we all know, Stephon Diggs tore his ACL midway through the season and wasn't available for the playoffs. And that's something that the Texans desperately needed this offseason, desperately needed this playoff run, was having another receiver outside to help out Nico Collins, not just have Nico Collins by himself. Now, Cecil Shorts brought this up earlier this week. I kind of brought this up a couple weeks ago as well. Not that we're probably more than likely not going to be able to see Tank Dell this upcoming season. We more than likely won't see him until the following season. I don't think that we'll see him until probably a couple games into the following season. I'm talking about week 3, week 4. I don't even think he'll be ready week 1 of the following season. And Cecil Shorts, who had a similar injury, even though he, like you said, he was a little bit older than Tank, similar injury, and he wasn't cleared for a while. So because of the type of injury, it wasn't just a straight ACL tear. It wasn't just a dislocated kneecap. It was a whole bunch of things. You're talking about ACL, MCL, LCL, dislocated knee. So just a lot of different things, more than likely a lot of different surgeries, and probably these surgeries can't all happen at the same time as well. So he more than likely won't be available this season and probably won't be available at the beginning of the following season as well. So the Texans definitely need to add to his receiver room and upgrade this wide receiver position. Now, I got a list of names of guys that have been tied to the Texans in one way or another, either due to relationship with certain players on the team, relationship with some of the coaching staff, and even some relationship in history with people in the organization as far as the scouting and the general managership and the personnel people and things like that. So these are a group of guys that I think that could be viable options for the Houston Texans, but I do have them in order. I have 5 names, but I have them in order of guys that I think more than likely will not be a Texan, and also the number one person, the person I think is more than likely has a great chance of being a Houston Texan. So the first name on the list is a name that people been talking about a whole lot, and that's wide receiver Garrett Wilson from the New York Jets. He's 24 years old, coming off a good season, 100 catches, 1,100 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He's had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Only been in the NFL for 3 years and had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons with no quarterback. We're talking about him playing with Zach Wilson the first 2 years, and this past year playing with 175-year-old Aaron Rodgers. And he's still able to get 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Now, he is a guy that's going to be looking for a brand new contract. He's going to be looking at trying to be being paid one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL, because his contract is about to be up. He again, same draft class as Stingley, and we know that very well, that more than likely Stingley might get a contract this upcoming offseason. So the Jets need to make a decision on him. I don't think this is a real option, honestly, because I think it's just going to cost too much. It's going to cost too much as far as draft capital, because you're going to have to trade for Garrett Wilson. So you're talking about giving up probably multiple picks, multiple first round picks at that. You're talking about then also paying them a high paid contract. You just paid Nico. We're just talking about we about to pay Stingley. More, eventually you're going to pay Will and also CJ as well. So to give this guy at this type of age, even though you're 24 years old, to give him that type of contract, because again, he's going to be somebody that's going to be looking at getting paid more than Nico Collins. Nico Collins had 2,000-yard seasons. He's had 3, and has been as long as he's been in the NFL. So I don't really see that as a real option. I don't really even see the Jets trading away the asset anyway. I don't really believe, and I know that he has shown a level of frustration. He's been frustrated, and he's seems like he wants out. I don't know if the Jets actually will trade him, and I just don't think the Texans have I don't think the Texans really have a real appetite for that to trade draft capital and also commit that type of money as well. And I know the relationship with him and CJ both playing Ohio State, things like that. I just don't really think that that's a realistic option. Now, number 4 is a name that's been talked about as of late, and that's Deebo Samuel, receiver out of San Francisco, 29 years old. We're talking about a guy that this past year coming off of a 600 season, 3 touchdowns this past year. Really not too much of a good season. Now he's asking for a trade, and it seems like either he might get traded or the San Francisco 49ers might cut him. Now, if the San Francisco cut him, it kind of changes things a little bit, but for a trade option, absolutely not. When it comes to the reason why they probably would, I mean, right now he's a $15 million cap hit, so I can see the 49ers trying to find a way to get rid of him. But I do think if they do end up cutting him, I think that's why I don't really think cutting is an option as well, because I think if they cut him, their cap hit goes from 15 million to 31 million. So I don't really see them doing that as well. But more than likely, they're going to try to find a way to trade him if they get rid of him. And he's a guy, to be honest with you, he's always hurt. I mean, I just talked about the reason why I think the Texans need to get a receiver. You want to add to his receiver room. You want to put more receivers in so you won't just have Nico Collins out there by himself in the playoffs. Why would you want to bring in somebody that doesn't play a lot of football? And to be honest, Debo's only had one real good season, dating all the way back in 2021. He had 1,400 yards, had 1,400 yards, had 6 touchdowns and 6 touchdowns. Then also had 8 touchdowns rushing and had like 300 yards on the ground. And that's really what we talk about. Yeah, he had 1,400 yards, had 300 yards rushing, had 8 rushing touchdowns, had 6 pass receiver touchdowns. That looks phenomenal. All pro things like that. And then the following year, 2022, 600 yards, 2 touchdowns. 2023, 800 yards, 7 touchdowns. Well, might as well say 900 because it was 800, 892 and 7 touchdowns. And this past year, 670 yards, 3 touchdowns. So he hasn't had a 1,000 yard season since 2021. 2022, 2023, 2020. We're 3 years going on 4 years removed from that situation since he's last had a 1,000 yard season. Now, again, that was a great season, 1,400 yards, and then also give you 300 yards on the ground. And I know the whole Swiss Army knife. I just don't really see him as a viable receiving option. And then we're also talking about a guy that's 29 years old that's had injury issues. We've just brought in a 30-year-old receiver that was never hurt, and Stephon Diggs, and he ended up getting hurt. Why would you want to bring in somebody that is known to get hurt? And also, his best attribute is being used in multifaceted by you being used as a receiver and a running back. So you're putting even more wear and tear on him to get him hurt. A guy who's known to get hurt, and he's also older. He's the oldest guy on this list, actually. So I really don't think the 49. I really don't think that Debo's a real good option. I know he has history with D'Amico, and they drawn that. I think they said the Texans have reached out or been in conversation, probably inquiring. Again, I get inquiring about Deebo, but realistically, I don't think that Deebo Samuels is a realistic option for the Houston Texans either, because of just I don't really see how. Just looking at the numbers, I don't really know what he really can contribute. As far as, again, yeah, he's a good player, but like what the Texans need, I don't really think he supplies what the Texans really need. So I don't really think it's a really good option. I do think it's an easier option because it's not going to be as much costly as a Garrett Wilson, but I don't really think it's a realistic option as well. Now, this is an option that I'm really liking. This is probably, honestly, my favorite option on the list. But again, we're gonna talk about why it might not be realistic, and that's DK Metcalf, the receiver from from Seattle Seahawks. 27 years old. Again, a person that's going to be a potential trade option. We're talking about a guy that it looks like he's asking for a trade, or he's like he's been frustrated. We've seen all type of mock trades and stuff like that. I think they said the Green Bay's reached out to him as well, or reached out to Seattle asking and inquiring about him. So it's a guy that he's definitely a guy that's an option. Last year only had 900 yards, but he's a receiver that is an actual receiving threat. We've seen him be a number one receiver, and he also has ties to Nick Caserio. Back in 2019, Nick Caserio wanted the New England Patriots to draft DK Metcalf. But Bill Belichick stepped in because at that time Bill Belichick was the actual general manager. I think they didn't have a general manager entitled. Nick was the assistant general manager, but Bill Belichick was actually the real general manager. And Bill Belichick ended up taking the kill Harry. Now we all know how that turns out. So now that Nick Casario has the ability to go out there and get this asset, I can definitely see you doing that. I mean, obviously, it seems like DK probably wants to get a trade contract and things like that. Get a brand new contract. So you would have to pay him, but just not the same type of money you have to give Garrett Wilson. So I can see you possibly giving DK Metcalf on par a similar contract, similar to what you just paid Nico. But again, he's a trade option. You got to trade for him. So it depends on really what you end up giving up. I seen mock trades to have him going for a third or fourth. So if you can get him for a third or a fourth, and then end up paying him a little bit more than Nico, but on a shorter term contract, absolutely. I feel like that's the move that you should make if you're able to do that. Anything over there, we're talking about seconds and firsts and multiple picks and all these different type of things. Then that's when I'm like, okay, that's a little bit pricey, and you're gonna have to pay him as well. If we're doing all that, yeah, actually, you're gonna have to pay him regardless because he's gonna want a new contract. So you're not gonna give up those assets for a 1 year rental either. Anyway, like you did Stephon Diggs, because you see that you still got Stephon Diggs as a cap hit for $16 million. He's a $16 million cap hit, even though we voided his contract. He's still going to be a $16 million cap hit this coming up season. So I don't think you want to put yourself in that same situation again with DK Metcalf. So I think if you do bring him in, you would want to bring him in on a longer term deal, on a longer term contract. So I just don't really see that as a real option. I think it's more realistic than Garrett Wilson and Deebo Samuels, and it makes more sense than Deebo Samuels, and I think it's more realistic than Garrett Wilson. But I just don't really know how real option that is. Now, these next two guys, I feel like are on some level a bigger, more likely to happen. I'm explaining why. Now this next person, number two, is T. Higgins. T. Higgins, 26 years old, from the Cincinnati Bengals, more than likely to be a free agent, even though there are talks of Cincinnati franchise tag him. Now, Cincinnati franchise tag him, it's a different situation. But if they don't franchise tag him, if they let him test the market, he's a free agent. So you automatically don't have to give up assets for him. We're talking about a guy that had what was it? Had 73 catches, 911 yards, 10 touchdowns this season. Um, we're talking about a guy that actually is very productive when he's healthy. Again, another guy that's not healthy. And my main thing, the reason why he's so high is because of as of right now, he's on slate to be a free agent. Now, if he does become a free agent, he gets franchise tag, which makes absolute sense for the Cincinnati Bengals to do. One, you stop him from talking from other teams, and two, you actually negotiate for, and you can actually get a first or second round pick for Tiggs, especially if they place the exclusive tag that you have to give up two first to get him if they put the exclusive tag on him. So if they do that to him, it makes all the sense in the world for the Cincinnati Bengals. So either you're guaranteed to have him for another season, or you guarantee that you're the only team that can talk to him and you can negotiate a contract with him. Or if you trade him, you get back draft assets for him. So it makes a lot of sense for the Cincinnati Bengals to do it. Just don't know if they will do it or not. And again, like I know some people say, well, he doesn't have to accept the franchise tag. Yes, he has no control over that. That's why it's called a franchise tag. That's why it's a tag. Like if a team tags you, you're stuck unless they take away the tag, or unless you have in your contract, like how like Dak Prescott has his contract, that he cannot be franchise tagged. So unless you have it in your contract, which again he's off his rookie contract, so that's not in his contract. That's only in players who've already gotten paid and already on their second, third, fourth contract, etc. So he does have the ability to be franchise tagged. So if he's franchise tagged, he goes from number 2 to number 5. Like he's the most least likely option, because you have to franchise tag him and you have to pay him. You have to trade for him and pay him and give him high paid money, or else you're going to have him for a 1 year rental. And then you won't be able to franchise tag him because he's already been franchise tagged twice. So that's just an absolute no option. Now, again, the only reason why he's number 2 is because as of right now, he's a free agent. He's free. That's the only reason why he's number 2. Again, I think he would be lower on this list if he was already franchise tagged. And again, the relationship with him and Joe Mixon, it seems like Joe Mixon kind of alluded to that after the season. Something he's going to talk to Nick and basically how about bringing some people in. And this seems like that's more than likely the relationship factors with him and Joe Mixon. He probably could talk to him like, "Hey man, hey bro, hey come down here to Houston, man. The city is the city, and hey, we can win out here. We got a QB out here too, man. We can win out here." So I could see that level, but I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I just don't see the Texans. The Texans are definitely not gonna trade. And I don't think any team really is gonna give multiple picks for T. Higgins. And I know the Texans are really not in the market of making him the highest paid receiver or one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL. I mean, you're talking about obviously paying him more than Nico, and I think Nico's a better receiver than him. But again, a free agent option able to upgrade the team, so it is likely. Now, this is the option that I think that now, I ain't gonna lie to you. A lot of y'all might not like this option. I think this is the best option on this list by far for a multitude of reasons. And it's Chris Olave, wide receiver out of the New Orleans Saints, 24 years old, entering his in his fourth year, been playing in the field for 3 seasons. Um, out of these 3 seasons, he's had 2,000 yard seasons. His first 2 seasons is last year. He didn't have a lot. He didn't have 1,000 yards this past year. His career high is 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns. Obviously, we know Ohio State has a relationship with CJ, play with CJ, and things like that. At Ohio State. The reason why I feel like he's the more likely option, and the reason why I know a lot of people would want him is because of the concussions. But I think that's the reason why he's the more likely option. And he's actually somebody that you really could go out there and get because of that. It makes a lot of sense for New Orleans. And I know they just hired Kellen Moore, offensive minded guy. So Kellen Moore might want to keep him. But because of those concussion issues, he's going to be a cheap option via trade. We're talking about somebody that more than likely to get moved, a former first round pick, by the way, somebody that more than likely to get moved for like a fourth or a fifth. Like you're talking about getting a walking 1,000 yard receiver because he's got the 2 seasons that he played a complete season. His first year and the second year had 1,000 yards in both seasons. We're talking about a guy that you can get for a fourth or a fifth round pick. Now I understand it's concussions. I get it. And the things about concussions are very, very tricky because with a concussion, you could not have concussion for 5 years. Like you can go 5 straight seasons, never have concussion. Or you can have a concussion in 5 games and miss the next 3 years. So like that's why the concussion thing is very, very tricky. But also, unlike concussions, there are measures you can take to potentially soften the blow or make it less likely. I mean, you got the little neck thing that Dr. Schultz be wearing. You got the extra padding on the helmet, and they be wearing the sleeve. You got the different type of helmets with the extra padding in the helmet. There's a lot of things that you can do to be proactive to try to prevent a concussion. Unlike a person like Deebo that's dealing with knee injuries and leg injuries, like and people dealing with hamstrings and stuff like that. Like those are things that you cannot prevent. Though those are things that you can like, there's no extra pants or extra socks or extra cleats or things like that you can make sure that hey, you don't mess up your leg or you don't mess up your hamstring or you can mess up your knee. Only thing is you can try to diet better, you can be more hydrated and things like that. But still, if you have those same soft tissue injuries or ankle issues or anything like that, those things still can linger. At least with a concussion, you can go out there and you can try your best as far as doing all these different things, all these different measures to try to go out there and prevent those things from happening. Again, I don't know if this is a more than likely situation, but I do think, and also, again, has ties to CJ, Ohio State, and also has ties to Nick Caserio. Nick Caserio was very high on Chris Olave. And I'm of the mindset that that draft in the 20 in that draft class, when we were sitting at pick 12, Chris Olave was right there, was falling to the board. And I think if Chris Olave would have failed, the Texans would have drafted him instead of trading back and drafting Kenyon Green. So I do think that he definitely, Chris Olave was definitely on the board. They had meetings with Chris Olave. They went to the pro day to see him and Garrett Wilson. Again, so he has, so Nick Caserio, I think he could be talking to both Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. With Chris Olave, I do think it's an easier guy to trade for. We're talking about a fourth or fifth round pick, and also because of his concussion issue, just like the same thing with Nico and the injuries. That if you do give him a contract, because he's going to be on board to get a contract as well, You could give him a contract right now to basically lock him up for the foreseeable future for a little cost. He would get paid less than Nico is. And he's going to accept that because of his issues, because of his concussion issues, because of his injury concerns. He's going to be more likely to do that. And just because you trade for him does not mean you can go out there and sign somebody else in the offseason or also even draft somebody in the draft, because I don't think he should be your move. I think it's more so of a adding to the receiving room. Some of these other guys like Garrett Wilson and DK Metcalf, that's upgrading the position. When it comes to Chris Olave, it's adding to the receiver room and upgrading the position, but we don't really know exactly because of, again, the injury concerns. Again, Deebo got injury concerns. T. Higgins got injury concerns. The only person who really don't got injury concerns on this list is Garrett Wilson. But I just don't think Garrett Wilson is a realistic option because, one, I don't think the Jets are going to trade him, and two, it's going to cost way too much because you're talking about giving them multiple picks and paying him a huge contract. And kind of the same thing with T. Higgins if T. Higgins ends up getting franchise tag, which I do think more than likely will happen. But as of right now, he's not been franchise tagged yet. So I'm just going to the mindset that he hasn't been franchise tagged yet. So I'm going with that. Deebo and DK, it seems like they've both been frustrated and been asking for trades. Don't really know how the teams are going to let them go. But Deebo, I just don't really see really what he supplies outside being a Swiss Army knife and being always hurt all the time. I don't really like just looking at this. Like I said, his only one real productive season was in 2021, which again was a great season. But since then, 600 yards, 800 yards, 600 yards, and it's missed time. I don't really know exactly how effective he could be long term, especially talking about what I said earlier in this video, going into the playoffs. And that's when you desperately need help outside and help with Nico Collins, so you won't just have your quarterback CJ out there with Nico Collins and the cast of receivers. Like, we need some realistic receiving options out there. Look at what's going on out there with the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, you see both of their receiving options went out there and made plays. Now, even though I know their defense was out there just destroying Kansas City offensive line and putting a lot of pressure on Patrick Mahomes, but just for Jalen Hurts able to have those options, able to sit back and chill and just throw a big pass to AJ Brown, boom, throw a bomb down the field over there to Smitty. Like, that's what you want. You want things to be easier for your quarterback, and you need to upgrade and add to that room. Again, now some of these names, actually all these names, have a lot of different reasons why they're more than likely it won't happen. But these are names in some capacity, in some form of way, have been tied, and we've been seeing tweets and things like that been tied to the Texans. I just want to break down exactly what I think. I think the least likely is Gary Wilson, unless T. Higgins get franchise tag. If T. Higgins get franchise tag, he's the least likely. But then I think right there is Deebo, DK. And I think the person who's the most likely to happen if one of these moves will be made would be Chris Olave, because of he's going to be cheaper as far as trading for, and also cheaper as far as actually getting a new contract as well if you end up paying them. Again, I know the concussion thing is a concern. It should be a concern, but there are steps you can take to try to prevent that as well. Like, subscribe if you haven't, comment below if you haven't, click that bell, get more videos. I'll holler.